everyone, I'm Sherry Eden Barber. I am the resident director for Ann Taking. We are currently in Toronto.
Hi, I'm Chika Ike. I am currently the resident director of the Philip Tour. We are in Boston, but about to head out to Schenectady.
I'm Hannah Ryan. I'm the resident director of the Broadway Company.
I'm Ashley Brooke Monroe, and I'm the resident director of the Angelica Tour.
This is such an exciting opportunity just to be able to sit on and see your faces on Zoom and be able to be together. Because I talk about shining a flashlight, and sometimes the people you meet in one moment, you have no idea who they're going to be in your life later or how you're going to find each other. And something that's really exciting about this, why I wanted us to have this moment together, is I think all four of us at different points in our lives were talking about each other or referencing each other or knew who each other were in other rooms. But it's so rare that we ever get to be together or work on something. Directing is inherently in itself such a solo endeavor. However, you're the one responsible for building the teams and the collaborations and taking care of things. But who takes care of you? And something started happening where I realized that there were other people out there with similar values and similar attributes and similar desires. And they happen to be women, which is kind of fantastic and beautiful. And I think it was hard to find each other because there were so few of us at different times. I had the opportunity to get to know everyone before I actually knew them in this room. And how it started was I knew who Hannah Ryan was. I was a big fan of her work. I'd heard her names in rooms, I had seen things, and then we ended up crossing paths, starting to cross paths in the Drama League, but not together. Instead, we were able to see what each other was doing, and other actors and other designers and other directors were talking about, you should know each other. And it was Hamilton that finally brought us together. And I learned the show. I spent most of my time with Hannah, and I had such an amazing opportunity, not only to see the show through her lens, but to see how she was running things and collaborating and creating such a healthy environment that people could continue to maintain a show, but also feel truly empowered to be themselves in that role. So it was pretty stunning. And it was an amazing opportunity for me to be vulnerable with another director and ask those questions that you're usually doing alone with another human being who was simultaneously so nurturing and also so strong and direct in what things needed to be, that's how we finally got to start a friendship. Chika Ike, I had the pleasure when I was the program director at the Drama League of seeing Chika's, it started with seeing Chika's essays and then photos of her work. And I couldn't stop thinking about what she had to say with them. The next up, we had an interview, and I was so taken by the worlds in which she wanted to create and how she was personalizing things and really answering why this, why now. And I had a rare opportunity to be a part of a committee and a team that will give opportunities and allow space for people to then explore Broadway and explore directors doing things on a level in which I want to say we desire to do them, right? I don't think any of us make things just for a small amount of people to see them, right? I think you make it to bring more and more and more people together, but how do you get in those rooms if you've never been in those rooms before? So I had an opportunity along with other colleagues at the Drama League, which I was also an alumni of, to help bring someone forward that was already doing the work and really just shine a flashlight on that so other people could do it. So it's really, again, it's advocating for each other. Ashley Brooke Monroe, I've been a fan of for years. I made my Broadway debut on Sweat while Ashley was down the street doing Indecent. Again, I got to see Ashley's work and see Ashley come into the Drama League. And I was just so taken by her simultaneous warmth and gentleness. And again, ability to empower those to be their best self. So that's the thriller. That's how I know everybody.
I know my story of being a director is pretty cut and paste. I loved the idea of theater as community and realized very quickly acting was not my ministry and pursued directing ever since. But I'm always so curious to hear how other directors found their way into directing or what their journey was like. So Ashley, since I don't have the answer from you, I have it from Sherry and Hannah from other things. Ashley, what was your journey to becoming a director? How did you find yourself here? Yeah.
I knew I wanted to be a director incredibly young. I was in middle school when I assistant directed my first play. I was taking like weekend acting classes at the one like good regional theater in Austin, where I'm from. And that acting teacher came and directed something at my middle school as like a guest artist. And since she knew me from our like Saturday acting classes, she asked if I wanted to be her assistant. And I was just like immediately bitten by the bug and thought it was so cool. So then I directed as much as I could in high school and studied dramaturgy when I went to college and directed a lot in college. And I've always had like a kind of laser focus that I wanted to direct new work in New York. And my story is kind of boring because I never deviated from that. I just like did that until it became my reality and became how I made my living and how I make my life. And I think I gravitated towards directing when I was young and have continued to stay with it because I just like having my hands in everything. Like I want to be a part of all of the design elements and every single actor's journey through the story and working with the playwright on the text. And I really like having the big picture umbrella view of the whole project. It's where I feel most comfortable.
No, I love that because I was the exact same way. And I always felt like such an odd duck because I didn't have like a winding path. And I was like, no, I knew in middle school I was meant to be in charge of things. Hannah, Sherry, do you have any, like, what was your journey?
I started out as an actor. I acted all through my childhood and was deciding on a major. I had like a pretty challenging time reconciling with my family and like the family pressure and expectation on what I was meant to do. And I was sort of on a track to go to nursing school and do the solid job that was known and consistent. And then I secretly snuck off to the library. Go libraries. Libraries are everything. And applied to colleges to study theater. And eventually that resulted in a confrontation with my parents, and we talked through it, and they were really lovely in that we came to a compromise of like, let's keep you in the state of Ohio and like try this for a year, do a little bit of theater on the side and see how that works, with still the goal of probably nursing and like community theater at night. And so I dipped my toe in the water and then jumped in when they weren't looking, and it just became all theater all the time for the rest of my life. And once I was in undergrad, I studied abroad my junior year in London, and that really changed everything for me. That was when I saw a lot of amazing productions directed by women and like pieces that had a particular female point of view. And it just radically shifted what I knew was possible. I shifted my focus at that time, like coming back the winter of my junior year to directing. And like Ashley, like I have been pretty like laser focused on that ever since. And I too enjoy having involvement in all departments, but I would say relationships with actors are just so important to me, and that's the work that I enjoy the most. And having an acting background initially and having that experience, I think, has been vital to those relationships that affect the way I run a room. And then also just thinking larger picture too, in terms of design and concept, with the text at the center of that, is also like a through line in my work as well. So yeah, that's my answer. Passing it over to Sherry.
I often joke that it was harder, it was more difficult for me to tell my parents I didn't want to go to law school. My parents coming up very, very working class, like, what is the plan? And how are we going to talk about this? And this is great. We want to support you, but we can't financially support this. So what does this look like? So I was acting for about 15 years, and something happened to me. And this is between college and grad school, where we had to figure out what does a plan look like. And that's when I think, out of necessity, like an entrepreneurial spirit came up, which was essentially finding bars, finding spaces that needed to bring people together and creating work in it, and not knowing what I was doing. Like that pluck that you have at 23, if you can bottle that pluck and not just like figure it outness and think of it for the rest of your life, like that's one of the, often if I'm feeling like I have no idea what's next or what's happening, I kind of just imagine there's always a way through. I was on a law school journey, and I realized how happy I was acting and taking classes, but I never fully, it was actually a summer at Hanger Theater. And it's when Rachel Chavkin was the drama lead director, and she was directing me as an actor in a show, and I was having the time of my life. But when it all finished, she took me aside and we were talking, and I was like, something doesn't feel right. Like, I really want to look at the whole picture. I'm not excited about just doing one part of this. I can't stop thinking about how everything comes together and how there are all these things. And she said, because you're a director. And, wherever you decide to go, here's my information, here's my number, I'll support you. And she has always stayed true to that. And here's like 15 years later, she kept that promise. And again, I think I'm in that place because when things got rough or things got difficult, there was someone that reminded me of the love and kind of taught me how to remind myself again. I loved playing sports, what's translated into I loved being a part of a team. I always loved coaching a team. I always loved finding people together that really wanted to work incredibly hard, but have a lot of joy and really make something together. And that's just always kind of been in my blood, in my bones. I love that aspect of it. I love finding the extraordinary in human beings. And I also love. My favorite thing about the theater is I talk about design as text, and I love making work that reminds us we're in a theater and also simultaneously allows us to forget everything and allows that imagination and that pluck and that desire to come forward. And really, it's just that whole like work hard, play hard, and find that space where we can do something really special, whether it's for 3.5 hours a night, 1 hour a night, 4 hours a night, just really make something together and inspire each other, right? To keep doing things we didn't think were possible.
Hannah, why do you think it's important to have women in directing roles?
We represent a major portion of society, and our stories are unique and can only be told properly by us. And so I think it's necessary to have women in leadership in creative spaces who can bring that unique point of view to the stage. And in doing so, those in the audience can look and see and understand. I know for me, I mentioned earlier in terms of my journey to directing that happened when I saw pieces directed by women, because I was able to look up on that stage and see an experience that it was authentic. It wasn't a man trying to understand how a woman thinks and go through a lot of effort to like put that upon the piece. Instead, it was just genuinely true. And I have found that to be such a necessary way in which I approach the work, is bringing that authenticity of experience to the stage. That if it's a woman's story, a woman is a central character. I believe a woman has a unique in to telling that story in that way.
A lot of the same things, Hannah, you were saying. I remember that there was this director, Chicago. I want to say it's Anna D. Shapiro, but if it's not, please edit that out. But a female director especially talked about director is essentially a magnet going underneath the story, and the story is like magnetic shavings. And every director has a different frequency. And so they're going to pick up different things in the story. And I don't know if it is not a fact universally known, but I have felt that along with authenticity, a sensitivity and a defiance in women telling stories, or marginalized people telling other marginalized stories, then because they're like, we have the space and we're going to own it in a different way. Most of my directing is just hoping to emulate what I've seen and how it felt seeing those stories. Yeah, I feel like women, when they get to tell stories about other people, there's like just a sensitivity and a nuance that comes with like, I want to be fully seen. I want others to fully see me, and people who have to navigate the world the same way I have to navigate through the world. And I will do it, by George, by Thunder, because you've already signed the check. Sherry, your turn.
I love that. I really love that. I think about this question a lot, and I think about clearing space so that it's the ability to do the work is present, and kind of make the focus really clear in these pieces and kind of understand, so that we have empathy in characters that we may not have. because we're looking at it from a lens, at least I'm looking at it from a lens of maybe I wasn't always seen, heard, or had the opportunities. So what does it look like now to be able to do that? It's okay to be nurturing, kind, and also direct and supportive and ask and need what you want. And I think sometimes those ideas get confused that they won't be successful. So that's why I think it's really important to have women in these roles. I think we've had to do it our whole lives. And so I think having somebody lead in spaces, you're able to have people be their best selves.
So what does your day-to-day as a resident director look like? I would say the majority of the role's responsibility is maintaining the artistic integrity of the production. So keeping it as clean and as fresh as it was opening night way back when it opened at the public on Broadway, and just keeping that like energy and that fire and that purpose alive on stage. And so that's all about the technical cleanliness of the show, the blocking, making sure everyone's in their light, but also intention, that the intention of the language is on point and making its way across the footlights to reach the audience. And then as new performers come in, it's our job as a resident director to direct them through the process and to give them as full of an experience as they can possibly have, given the fact that they're not starting with a new company and have the traditional like 4 to 6 week rehearsal process, full tech, full preview. So sort of catering to the way in which they work and the resources we have at our disposal to make it a unique and fulfilling experience for them to be able to step on that stage and have their own sort of opening night when they make their way into the company.
Yeah, the day-to-day life of a resident director is busy, but really fun and really different every week. We usually have like maybe 2 to 5 people in rehearsal learning new principal tracks at any given time. So we're rehearsing in the afternoon and then continuing to rehearse during the evening show or watching the evening show to take notes. I take very seriously the responsibility to try to let each actor who joins the company feel like they're able to make the roles their own. And we're very not cookie cutter with Hamilton. There's no like one right way to be Aaron Burr or any other character. So I spend a lot of my time looking for the best version of where this human and this actor and the things that we know to be true about this character meet. So that's a lot of the rehearsal process. And the show is very specific and complex and long. So the learning process is challenging and fun for everyone. And with noting the show and, you know, keeping it in the best shape possible and maintaining the artistic integrity, as Hannah said, I think it's both about keeping a very clean show and, you know, making sure that it feels like someone in a random city in the middle of America is getting the same experience as they would with any other production of Hamilton globally, but also keeping the actors inspired and making it fun to do the show 8 times a week, year after year for many of the company members. So looking for ways to provoke and instigate and find fresh and new moments inside of a very well-built, magnificent creative machine that everyone has been a part of for a long time at this point.
Part of being a resident director is having a plan, being prepared, and then being able to pivot immediately. Because what makes this piece, like we can talk ideally, like what makes this piece so special and so incredible is that it is all actor generated. Like that's it. And you're completely exposed on stage. And it's also something so many people are familiar with. So there's the parts of it that must stay the same, but then there's room inside, again, to feel like there's a reason why you're cast in it and you're brought to it. And every single move, lyric, lighting cue has an intention and has a purpose. And so really not only maintaining that and people walking in and wherever you are in the world, seeing it and feeling like you're seeing Hamilton, but also feeling like you're seeing a really unique experience of Hamilton at the same time. We're real human beings day to day, especially when you're on the tours. Not only some days you're changing locations, you're changing cities, you're working, the stage is always the constant, but the environment and the way to the stage is always different. So really it's about creating balance and beauty and making sure the people that are going in and out of the show feel a part of that show and that things feel simultaneously consistent and also fresh.
It's so good to hear the three of you talk about your day to day, because I am in an interesting position where my day to day is very different because I just started. So I'm still learning the show. And I'm reminded of that constantly because, like Ashley, you said, it is a complex machine. And every day is something a little bit new, or I find out something new about myself, because part of learning the show is also learning how you learn and learning how you feel comfortable communicating with other people and building your own relationships with each person in the team. And so a lot of my day is split between like doing rehearsals, doing scheduling, planning, watching and noting the show, but it's also filled with just a lot of questions, a lot of trial and error, personal trial and error, and like, how do I learn this particular track? Is it best to look at the archive? Is it best to not look at the archive? You know, things like that. A lot of homework. So it is like being back in class. But that also is exciting because I'm the new person, which is a very interesting thing for a director to be. I don't think directors just are naturally the first person in, the last person out. And so it is very exciting to be like, I am the new person. So almost every note is actually an ongoing conversation, an ongoing question, rather than like a period, like a directive. And so like I'm still finding out like, oh yes, this is a conversation. Like Sherry said, this is a conversation that we can keep having about what is the story for you. And that is really exciting to learn the show this way of like, yes, you can go to this particular point, but what does it mean for your character to go to this particular point? And how do we keep that consistent and exciting and engaging every night? Think questions about yourself that you never really had to answer, like, how do I pack a trunk? Are in play. And yeah, it's an exciting thing to sort of start that journey, but also know that the three of you have also made the journey. So it's okay.
You belong here. Like, I can say this as a woman who grew up in the middle of nowhere, like the plains of Ohio, with a stop sign 5 miles down the road, like, and no neighbors within miles. So I sort of am like sick and tired of this like paying your dues attitude that is in our business. Like, be there because you need to be there. Be there because you have something to say, and you have to work very hard to get there. And that's just the reality of it. But doing the job is a lot of hard work. So that's also a necessary muscle to condition. But the stories that you have inside of you, that if you feel like, I need to tell this story, I need to be a director, I need to be in a place of leadership, trust that is enough. And that will fuel you to get into these spaces, because for a very long time, the money is non-existent and the work is tireless. So you have to run off of that innate desire. Like, that is the fuel that will get you to where you feel in your heart you need to be, and trust that. Love you all. I am going to run, but thank you for this.
So good to see you. Enjoy Spring Awakening. I bet your production is beautiful.
Oh, thanks. I'll send
pictures. Yes, please.
Bye.
Well, I think when I was a younger director, I felt like I had a lot to prove as a woman. And I felt like I always was perceived as younger than I even was. And so I would walk into spaces with actors who were much older than me, much more experienced than me. And I think I wasted a lot of energy trying to prove that I was smart and capable and deserved to be in this leadership role. And so my main advice, if I could give it to my younger self, would be to chill out and to know that you're there for a reason. And if you're already in the room and directing the piece, and those actors have chosen to work with you, and the designers and if it's all happening, there's a reason for it. And so you don't have anything to prove. And now that I have sort of internalized that, I'm able to be a much better director because I don't hold so tightly. I don't feel like I have to assert my vision above all else to make sure that people understand that I have one. I can just sort of exist and let the best idea in the room always come through, no matter where it comes from. And my very practical bit of advice is coming up as a young female director is to get photos of everything you direct, because I never prioritize that. And I'm not really a camera person or a like internet person. I don't have a good website, and I don't have evidence of so many of the things that I've directed. And that is really one of the few ways you can try to share your work with people to get more work. They want to see images and your style. And I never really knew that until it was like too late. So make sure you get good pictures of everything you direct, even if it's like on a rooftop in Brooklyn, as much of my early work was.
Get shots, get wide shots.
Yes, wide shots, please.
Never do wide shots.
Everything.
I'm gonna say like the things that I wish I had known when I first started out. I'm still in a place of what is wisdom. I wish I had known that directing is ultimately just curiosity, curious about the story it can go, and curious about how far the imagination can go. Like Ashley said, it's not about being assertive. It really is about like just asking questions and seeing how it inspires other people. Stay curious, like stay incredibly, deeply, imaginatively, expansively curious about the world around you. And that will only make your stories much more nuanced and deeper. My practical piece of advice is like, stay in touch with your support system. Your people are your people, especially if they're not in theater. It can be a little tricky to be like, Monday's my day off. But I have found that, and we have talked about, is that like the support system comes through for you in all of the way, in so many ways that the room cannot provide. Directing is lonely. Sometimes you just need someone to get a drink with after rehearsal and just like commiserate. That is great. Or, text a funny little TikTok too. Keep in touch with your support system and trust them.
Well, first of all, like this, build this, yes, being the resident director of Hamilton is unbelievable, has been the community that this has brought together with the resident directors. And Chico, welcome. It's so exciting to know you and to be able to be that. And I speak for the people that will understand it, that and this are on this call, and there's things that you're going to understand that we don't. And so it's be that for each other and recognize that. I'm so grateful for Ashley and Hannah and the women that I have been working with that have come onto this. So there's that, right? Look around. I would say my advice would be that you are enough. And the things that maybe you doubted, trying to come up in this business, or that made you feel weird or made you feel a certain way or saw it, those will become your superpowers. Those will become your story. I feel really strongly that as directors, there is a story that we're trying to tell on stage, but then there's a story that connected us to the story. And think about your process deeply, as well as what the final performance will be. The advice I would give to my younger self is always look at what that process is. If I'm going to be in the room with people, I want to be in the room with people. I always say, like, I want to surround myself with people smarter than I am, and that people that I'd love to eat a meal with. And that we're all coming to the table from different ideas and different angles, but really excited about the same thing. And that's being in this room and making something really special. It's hard as a director, especially when you're coming up. You have to knock on doors. You just have to knock on doors, and you've got a cold call and you've got to email, but it's really wild when somebody answers. You could send 50 or 60 and say, hey, I just want to be in this room, or I did a lot of working for free until I realized how to be able to sustain both things, right? And eventually, like, Hamilton is one of the first jobs I've ever had that I've been able to work full-time as a director. So I think it's also figuring out how to take care of yourself, figuring out what you want to do, what rooms you want to be in, be really intentional about that, creating those relationships, creating your own work, getting those pictures, getting those images, and realizing that you'll get a lot of, I want to see your work. Can I see your work? But it's not just about seeing your work. It's about being able to speak about your work and talk about your work in a way that they feel like they were there.
So I just cold emailed Tommy Kail and said, I think I should be a resident director for Hamilton. And eventually that worked. So that is good advice. Just like ask for what you want and email people who you admire and try to find a way to make stuff happen, because it does work sometimes.
I third that. Also, you don't know, like, Ashley just said. Like directing is like, you have to look at long-term pictures, just to piggyback on what Sherry said. I was working on a show with a director, and then it took us 6 years for that thing to premiere. I've known Sherry and Hannah for 5 years, who knows, with pandemic. But like, directing is so long term. The connections that you make are so long term. You can't really think of it in like season by season. You think of it as like 5-year chunks. So you have to really spend a lot of time with yourself and asking yourself what you want. So get the wide shots.
Get those wide shots.
Get the wide shots.